Previously on the Originals. Freya sent Davina's soul back to the ancestors in order to kill Lucien. Marcel, consumed with anger over Davina's death, sought revenge against the Michaelson family. Fearing the prophecy, Elijah ultimately killed Marcel, but Vincent revealed to Josh that Marcel had taken the super serum. Blood spread across the map in an instant, signaling that the Michaelson family had enemies all over New Orleans. Freya was suddenly ambushed. A strange witch appeared in Klaus's room, and a flood of enemies soon followed, pouring into the Michaelson estate. The Originals brothers looked on in shock at the unfolding chaos. Marcel stormed in with his forces, declaring that he had hired a witch to break the house's binding spell. He intended to personally direct the grand finale of the Michaelson family's downfall. Without hesitation, Hayley knocked a female vampire to the ground, but Freya, already poisoned, was losing her strength. They decided to leave the mansion, but another vampire blocked their path, and Hayley, without missing a beat, wrestled with him, swiftly ripping out his heart. Though his blood splattered across her face, Hayley shoved the vampire away, got up, and helped Freya to her feet as they made their escape. They fled to Lucien's mansion with hope in their arms. Hayley stared in horror at her blood-soaked reflection in the mirror, the image eerily identical to the one in the prophecy of doom. Hayley placed Hope in a crib and said there must be an antidote at Lucien's place, but Freya, weakening, said that even if her poison was cured, she had lost the power to defeat Marcel. By this time, the three Originals brothers were already surrounded on all sides. Cole remarked that Davina would never want to see Marcel like this, accusing Marcel of desecrating Davina's cherished memories. Marcel, enraged, attacked Cole, mercilessly sinking his fangs into Cole's neck. Cole was flung across the room. The Originals brothers joined forces against Marcel, but none of them were a match for him. Klaus was soon thrown aside as well. Elijah continued to fight Marcel, only to have Marcel bite deeply into his arm. The Originals brothers were all left injured. The vampires watching the battle were seething with anger. Klaus's eyes turned gold as he swore to fight Marcel to the death, but Rebecca arrived just in time. Stepping between them, the appearance of his beloved calmed Marcel's fury. Heeding his sister's words, Klaus quickly led his brothers away. Rebecca, noticing the witch's mark on her arm growing clearer, demanded an explanation from Marcel. Hayley and Freya searched the entire house but still couldn't find the antidote. Klaus returned with his brothers in tow. Hayley anxiously looked at the wound on Elijah's wrist, but Cole's injury, with its bite to the neck, was far more severe. Klaus tried to comfort his brother, but Freya mercilessly shattered his hopes, saying that every antidote takes years to cure the illness, and they might not live long enough to see that day. Former lovers met again, but everything around them had changed beyond recognition. Rebecca pleaded with Marcel to save her family. Instead, Marcel says that Elijah and Cole must die, and that he will kill Klaus before midnight. Rebecca asked Marcel if he planned to kill her next. Marcel assured her that he would never harm her, but he was determined to reclaim control of the city.
The man that I loved never fancied himself judge, jury, and executioner.
Finally, Marcel relented and said he would organize a trial to give Klaus the punishment he deserved. The Michaelson family was nearly all gravely injured. Cole and Elijah were bitten, and their wounds were almost beyond healing. Freya was poisoned by a vampire faction and was on the brink of death. Rebecca was afflicted with a witch's curse, threatening to drive her mad at any moment. Klaus, the only one fortunate enough to remain unharmed, had become the primary target of their enemies. Thanks to Rebecca's efforts, Marcel organized a trial for Klaus, vowing to deliver a just death sentence. Marcel's fervent followers were busy destroying Klaus's former mansion. Rebecca watched helplessly as the destruction unfolded. She called Klaus, informing her brother that he had to attend the trial, or else their enemies would hunt him down without rest. His siblings would have no time to save themselves and would be left to die. Elijah pointed out that this wasn't a trial but a death sentence, urging Klaus to take Hayley and Hope and leave the city, but doing so would mean abandoning his siblings to their fate. Cole was already descending into madness, writhing on the couch as his family rushed to calm him down. Freya, however, suggested that there might still be a way to save the entire family, but Klaus would need to buy her some time. Klaus decided to face the trial. Hope sat quietly in her stroller. Klaus slipped a letter into Hayley's bag. Hayley approached, insisting on going with him, but Klaus refused her offer. He entrusted his daughter to Hayley and resolutely walked away. Klaus calmly returned to his former home, where Rebecca was already waiting for him at the door. The siblings embraced tightly, knowing they were walking into a war with an uncertain outcome. Hand in hand, they walked into the crowd of revelers. Klaus stood alone, bearing the wrath of his enemies, with no trace of fear on his face.
I have nothing to hide, Marcel. You wish to put me on trial for my many grievous sins. Well, go on. Have at it.
In the charged atmosphere, Marcel transformed into the judge, presenting the victims and the accused one by one. This man, his wife, was drained of blood by Klaus. This handsome-faced gentleman is transformed by Klaus over a piece of land and then forced to burn down an entire village. This little girl, because her mother's coughing disturbed Klaus's rest, she was forced to watch her mother burn to death. Klaus defended himself, saying that it was through these very acts that he earned the world's respect and, in turn, protected his family. Marcel countered, saying that he, too, was once part of Klaus's family, yet Klaus ripped his heart out and threw him into the river. Klaus had indeed turned everyone present, granting them eternal life and power, but he had also enslaved and abandoned every one of them, and for that, he must be punished. The situation was turning against Klaus. Cole was descending further into madness, even gripping Hayley by the throat. Elijah rushed over to subdue his brother, but the wound on his arm had already begun to fester. Rebecca stepped forward to speak on her brother's behalf, arguing that he had protected his family, and as for his sins, not a single person here could claim to be innocent. Marcel disdainfully interrupted Rebecca, asking why. If Klaus was so intent on protecting his family, did he cruelly seal her away simply because she fell in love with Marcel? The voodoo scars on Rebecca's arms are getting redder and more prominent. Under Marcel's relentless questioning, Rebecca gradually lost her composure, her expression turned cold and resolute, and without hesitation, she took a stand against Klaus. But Rebecca's eyes did not turn black. With ruthless precision, Rebecca recounted Klaus's crimes, declaring that she had endured more suffering over the past 1,000 years than anyone present. As Rebecca's accusations rang out, the crowd's anger reached a fever pitch, and they began to demand Klaus's death to appease their rage. Elijah curled up alone by the edge of the bed, his wounds worsening, and he began to imagine that his moments of love and passion with Hayley were nothing more than a figment of his imagination. Hayley's eyes are red as she holds her lover's hand tightly. Neither of them knew what kind of fate awaited them. Elijah kissed Hayley's cheek and buried his face deeply in her embrace. Klaus began to defend himself against his impending fate. He argued that Marcel was only seeking revenge for Davina, ignoring the fact that Davina had repeatedly harmed the Michaelson family and had countless times disregarded Marcel's warnings and goodwill. As for the other enemies gathered around, the only reason they were still standing there was that Klaus had allowed them to live.
And your very immortality is a gift from me, a debt that you can never repay. You will remember me, Klaus Michaelson!
Seeing that Marcel was eager to strike, Rebecca was the first to speak, suggesting that killing Klaus would be too merciful and that there must be another way to make him suffer endless torment. The crowd loudly echoed her sentiments. Klaus's fearless acceptance of death made them reconsider their course of action. Marcel stepped forward to calm the crowd's fury. He raised a curved dagger high, declaring that it was imbued with powerful dark magic that would plunge Klaus into eternal agony until Marcel decided to release him. The crowd dragged Klaus down from his pedestal, exposing his heart to Marcel. Without hesitation, Marcel drove the curved dagger into Klaus's heart, the blade slowly sinking into his body. Freya's spell was ready. Hayley dialed Rebecca's phone number. Rebecca told her that Klaus had found a way to survive. He was sacrificing himself to give his siblings a chance at life. Freya placed the blood-stained dagger, tainted with Rebecca's blood, in front of her. Elijah and Cole sat around the table. Freya began chanting the spell, and blood began to flow across the yellowing talisman paper. Elijah and Cole started to tremble uncontrollably. The spell took effect, and they all collapsed simultaneously. Rebecca also lost consciousness, falling onto the couch. The burden of reviving the Michaelson family now rested solely on Hayley's shoulders. Vincent looked at the chaotic scene before him, and with a mocking bow to Marcel, said, "You're no different from the great Michaelson's piles of bodies, rivers of blood." They were both the kind of people who would stop at nothing, harming the innocent to achieve their goals. With that, he declared the end of his friendship with Marcel. Hayley packed the Originals into coffins, and with her daughter and several large coffins in tow, she embarked on a journey of exile. She would search alone for a cure to save the Michaelson family. During this time, Freya and her younger siblings will stay in a virtual world of consciousness in a conscious state. Although Cole wasn't particularly thrilled with the pastoral charm of their new home, it was the moment of peace bought by Klaus's sacrifice. Marcel, having avenged himself, felt conflicted. He entombed Klaus within the brick wall, Carrying the hopes of her entire family, Hayley drove off into the distance, and the story of the Michaelson family would temporarily come to a close. In a secluded villa, a freckled little girl was drawing. She was none other than Klaus's young daughter, Hope. Suddenly, the sound of a car horn blared outside the window.
Is that her?
Hayley had been on the road with several large coffins for a full 5 years, finally finding a cure for Freya and a witch capable of lifting the curse. She had also gathered the toxins from 6 major werewolf clans. On this peaceful and beautiful afternoon, Jackson's grandmother, Mary, brought news of the last remaining descendant of a werewolf clan. Though she disapproved of Hayley's decision to revive the Originals, she always believed that Hope would be better off growing up without the influence of the Michaelson family. But Hayley never wavered in her resolve. She didn't just want to bring Elijah back to life, she wanted Hope to grow up surrounded by her family's love. Mary handed Hayley the whereabouts of the last werewolf, and though she suspected it might be a trap, Hayley took the paper without hesitation. It was the 5th year of the Originals' siblings' slumber and Klaus's unending torment. Marcel had secured control of the city. Vincent, as the regent of the witches, assisted him in maintaining peace in New Orleans. The day of the Michaelson family's fall had become a holiday celebrating the city's independence and liberation. Vampires flocked from all over the world just to catch a glimpse of Klaus's miserable state, though perhaps some had other motives as well. In the 5th year of Rebecca's absence, Marcel began a relationship with Sophia. Sophia, as always, provided him with valuable intelligence. She informed him that there seemed to be a growing insurgent force within Vincent's witch faction, with strange magical symbols appearing all over the city. Additionally, a vampire had tracked down several vampires from Elijah's bloodline, leading him to believe that Elijah was still alive. He'll probably demand Klaus' blood to hunt down Hayley and Hope, who are on the run. The once glorious Michaelson estate had fallen into ruin. Overgrown with weeds, Marcel entered the dark, eerie tunnels of the Originals' mansion, where Klaus, barely alive, was imprisoned. Marcel had already removed the curved dagger from Klaus's body but continued to bind him with dark magic shackles and a witch's barrier, occasionally feeding him a jar of blood to keep him alive. Marcel wanted to investigate Alistair's intentions. For Rebecca's safety, he couldn't allow Klaus to die. Klaus was fully cooperative with Marcel's plan, suggesting that Alistair was merely a prideful nobleman, easy to exploit once his weakness was exposed. And so, a flawless plan was set into motion. Alistair finally appeared at Marcel's high-end soiree. He was convinced that Elijah was still alive. His witch believed that the remaining bloodlines of the Michaelson family were all connected to Klaus, so he needed a drop of Klaus's blood to confirm this theory and intended to eradicate the remaining members of the Michaelson family. If Marcel refused, it would mean he sympathized with the Originals. Left with no choice, Marcel agreed to let him see Klaus at midnight. Satisfied, Alistair left the party, but he quickly received word from his men that they had successfully tracked down Hayley's whereabouts by following a lone female werewolf. Alistair tersely issued his command. He wanted Hayley and that werewolf dead. After 5 long years of difficult searching, Hayley finally gathered all the toxins and remedies needed to resurrect the Michaelson family. She decided to temporarily leave home to find the last descendant of the werewolf lineage. Before leaving, mother and daughter pressed their fingers to their lips, sealing a promise. Hayley promised to call her daughter every night before bed, and Hope assured her that she would listen to Mary. Despite her reluctance, Hope maturely watched her mother's departing figure. Hayley soon found Keelan, who had just transitioned from a hospital and turned to a full-fledged doctor. Her family had all been killed by Lucien, making her the last remaining member of her bloodline. Hayley revealed her golden wolf eyes, hoping to have a talk with Keelan. Meanwhile, Alistair received a message that his men had located Keelan and Hayley, and he ordered them to kill them both immediately. Hayley and Keelan arrived outside a bar. Keelan took the opportunity to elbow Hayley, knocking her down, and immediately tried to escape. She scrambled over a low wall, only to find Hayley waiting for her on the other side. Hayley told her that she had no intention of harming her. In fact, she needed Hayley's protection. Just then, the sound of enemies searching the bar reached Hayley's ears, so she didn't hesitate. She knocked Keelan unconscious and carried her away. Hayley tied Keelan to a chair, assuring her that she wouldn't take her life, only that she needed a bit of her venom to save her family. Keelan wisely chose to cooperate. Hayley decided to revive Freya first. She pulled a vial of serum from her bag and approached the sleeping Freya, injecting the serum into her body. Freya jolted awake, finally ending her 5-year slumber. They embraced tightly. There was no time for catching up. Freya had to mix the toxins of the 7 wolf clans into the antidote as soon as possible or Elijah and Cole would die. Freya set up the antidote in an open field, warning that it was a very powerful spell that would take time to complete. But Alistair's men had tracked them down through Keelan, leaving Hayley to face the enemy alone. Hayley flashed to the parking lot, but it was deserted. The enemies soon swarmed in, surrounding Hayley, but Hayley was no longer the girl who first arrived in New Orleans. She swiftly ripped out the hearts of one enemy after another. One straggler found Freya. Keelan, terrified, tried to resist, but Freya casually waved her hand, instantly killing the vampire. Hayley had wiped out the first wave of enemies, but the well-prepared opposition soon sent reinforcements. Unfazed, she revealed her golden eyes, and as the men looked on in horror, Hayley transformed into a wolf, tearing out their throats with her fangs. Freya's spell was taking effect. The 7 different wolf venoms gradually merged together. She lifted the antidote and walked to Elijah's coffin, opening it to reveal her brother's decaying arm. The parking lot was now littered with bodies, and the wolf-formed Hayley savaged the last remaining vampire. The vampire quickly perished. Naked and bloodied, Hayley stood up. The 2 dying enemies tried to make a last stand, but an unknown force took the lead and killed them. Her long-lost lover appeared behind Hayley, gently draping a jacket over her shoulders, just as he always had. 5 years of longing surged forth all at once. Hayley had single-handedly revived the entire Michaelson family and reunited with the love of her life.